Welcome once again to Energy Literacy Training, Module number 6. The whole training about the energy literacy is all about knowing where the energy is generated, how it is consumed, what are its impact on the environment, and what are the alternatives. So in this module, as the title suggests, I'm going to talk to you about climate change. And the title says, Climate has changed. So in the previous module, we discussed about the carbon footprint and estimating how much is your own energy consumption, how much is your own carbon footprint. That was done with the purpose to make you realize that how much contribution you are making for the climate change. And the climate change is a global problem. Every individual humans who is living on this planet right now, who is consuming some or other form of energy, is contributing to the climate change. And therefore climate has changed, it's already changed. And let us establish this concept. Why do I say that climate is changed? Well, forget about me. What do you think? Do you think the climate has changed? Do you think there are something which is not normal in our regular climate that used to be there, our regular weather pattern that used to be there? Do you think winter season has changed? The winter is not same anymore. Do you think rainy season has changed? It is not same anymore. The rain monsoon pattern has changed. The summer pattern has changed. There are heat waves and floods. All kind of things are happening. What do you think? Do you agree that seasons have changed? Yes, all of us have experienced in our own life, irrespective of whether you are old or young, we know that things are changing and seasons are changing very fast. The climate is changing very fast. Well, so the climate has changed. Until now, we have learned how the use of fossil fuels, that is petrol, coal and gas, caused the carbon dioxide emission. When we use petrol, coal and gas, it results in carbon dioxide emission that we have already seen. How much it results, that also we have seen. You have learned how to quantify your own carbon footprint. But let us now look at into a little bit more detail why it is important to know how much is our carbon dioxide emission. Well, the planet Earth, there is a carbon dioxide already in our atmosphere. But look at this graph of last 1,000 years of carbon dioxide record. During the last 1,000 years, starting from 1000, 1200, 1400, 1600, even up to 1800, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was constant. Isn't it? Can you see from the bottom line there? It was all constant. Though humans were there, though animals were there, but it was all constant. But what is happening in last 150 years, and particularly last 50 years, we have gone through industrial revolution. As a result of industrial revolution, we started using coal, petrol, diesel more and more. I showed you in the earlier module. And coal, petrol and diesel is a carbon fuel. So when we burn coal, petrol and diesel and gas, it results in carbon dioxide emission. Where does the carbon dioxide go? It goes in the atmosphere and it remains there. Once the carbon dioxide is emitted, it remains there for 200, 300, 400 years. And that's why I said earlier, misusing energy, overusing energy is nothing less than a crime. Why? Because you are responsible for carbon dioxide emission. It is going to be there for 200, 300, 400 years. And your children and their children and their children are going to suffer all the consequences. So your 1 hour of comfort of using AC is 300 years of discomfort for somebody else. Your one bath with the warm water using electricity is a discomfort for somebody else for hundreds of years. Anyway, so what is happening? In the last 50 years, the amount of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere is increasing, and you are putting more and more carbon, so there is a more and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now. There is 47% extra carbon dioxide, 47% extra carbon dioxide now in the atmosphere. And this graph on the right hand side, you see how rapidly CO2 is increasing in the atmosphere. And what happens? CO2 is a greenhouse gas and it results in a global warming. By the way, do you know how much carbon dioxide we are putting in our atmosphere every single second? Every single second. I think in your weirdest dream also you could not imagine how much carbon dioxide we are putting. Every single second about 1.3 million kilogram of carbon dioxide is put in the atmosphere. 1.3 million kilogram of carbon dioxide every single second. What does it mean? By the time I start speaking a sentence and finish a sentence, we would have emitted about 10 million kilograms of carbon dioxide. My God, isn't it? Every single second. Just mere thought of that we are putting so much CO2 in the atmosphere makes me sick. I don't know about you, what you are thinking, but it really feels me sick that we are actually doing so much of emission. So what happens because of the carbon emission? What happens? Carbon emission, as I said, is a greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, so it results in a global warming, and because of the global warming, there is a climate change. Isn't it? This is a very simple relationship. How much is the global warming that has happened? Well, for the centuries and centuries, the temperature of the atmosphere was constant, of the planet Earth, average temperature of Earth's surface was constant. But after our industrialization, after 1850s, the temperature started increasing, and you can see from this graph that by 2020, that is last year, the global average temperature was about 1.1 degrees centigrade more than the pre-industrial era temperature. 1.1 degrees centigrade more than the pre-industrial era temperature. It is estimated that by 2040, the global temperature will reach about 1.5 degrees centigrade. Latest, it can reach much earlier also, and I will show you some numbers. People are estimating in the next 8 years, 10 years also, so not 2040, we may reach 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2030 also. I'll show you. So this is the higher side of the time frame. So global temperature is rising, and as a result of that, what is happening? The climate is changing, all weather patterns are changing, all kind of events are taking place. So climate is changing because of the global warming that we have already experienced. What are the events that suggest that climate has changed? And there are many events that we can observe in our life now. There are increasing amount of glacier melting, increasing frequency of hurricanes, increasing forest fires, increasing heat waves, increasing floods, and increasing sea level. All these are responsible. All these are showing that the climate has changed. Let us take some example that shows how the climate has changed. For example, glaciers are melting, and there is a very famous event, this glacier, Okyukul glacier, which is in 1986. You can see from the image, 2019 disappeared, completely disappeared. In fact, if you go there at that point, there's a placard there that denote and indicate the death of the glacier. Can you imagine? And that is not one glacier. There are many glaciers which have already died or they are dying. I will show you a video of a hurricane, Ida, that appeared just very recently, 26 August 2021 in Louisiana, America. Now this few hours back when it happened, the hurricane was category 2. Within a very short time, 2 hours, 3 hours, it became the category 4, which is a very dangerous level of the hurricane. This video will show you what was that wind speed, 230 kilometers per hour kind of wind speed. Just have a feel of what it means to have the hurricane of that level. Well, what else has happened? The forest fires are increasing. Recently in August 2021, there were forest fires in Italy, Greece, Turkey, Russia. And temperatures in Italy, even 48.8 degrees centigrade. has been recorded. And in Russia, it is estimated that about 15 to 17 million hectares of forest got burned. And when forest burns, everything else also happens. Animals also gets burnt alive. The insects also get burnt alive. The ecosystem gets damaged. But now we can see more and more forest fires are happening. What else? There are heat waves, increasing amount of heat waves. In Canada, there was a heat dome effect that has resulted in 49.6 degrees centigrade temperature for a couple of days in a city in Canada. Can you believe it? A cold place, 49.6 degrees centigrade, 900 people died. There were floods of increasing intensity. This image that you see is not an image from a war. It is image from a flood in a very well systematic country like Germany. Can you imagine what would have happened? The amount of floods, hundreds of people died in Western Europe when this happened in 15 July, around that time in 2021. On 3rd August, in Madhya Pradesh state of India, about 1225 villages got affected from the heavy flooding. 1225 villages. Imagine the kind of vastness of the flood that is there. But it is not only India, it is also in China. 200,000 people have to be evacuated from their homes. Not only that, also in Japan, the millions of people, 2 million people in Japan get evacuated. So there are more increased amount of floods that is taking place. Sea level is rising. Can you believe it? The amount of sea level rising every single year, 3.3 millimeter. 3.3 millimeter may sound very small, but it is the sea we are talking about. The sea are considered infinite surfaces of water, but the sea level itself is rising. Imagine what will happen to the cities and countries near the coastal area, and there are some very low-lying area where the seawater is already getting in. These are all happening due to the climate change. Congratulations to all of you, because all of you have contributed in all these terrible events that are taking place on this planet. What is the impact of sea level? There is one city, Jakarta, which is the capital of Indonesia. It is called the sinking city. Sinking city. Why? Because sea level is rising fast. The city is very close to the sea surface, sea level, and water is getting inside. And the government of Indonesia has planned to shift the entire capital to some other place. Imagine the cost of doing it. When we talk about the climate correction, people say it is expensive. But look at the cost of the damage that climate change will cause to us due to the floods, due to the heat waves, due to the increasing sea level, and all kind of things. Huge amount of forests, as I already told, has happened in Amazon, very famous, Australia, Russia, America, everywhere. Even there are forest fires. Even there are forest fires in Siberia. Unbelievable, isn't it? Well, due to the climate change, what has happened? The frequency and the severity, the intensity of all these disasters have increased. And that is very clear. Look at the frequency of it. The incident due to the storms, in 1980s there used to be about 174 incidences. By 2020, 400 incidents of a storm. In 1980, there were about 88 major flood incidents on the planet. By 2020, 450 major flood incidents. 450. So look at the increase in the frequency of these events. In 1980s, the forest fire used to be there earlier, but there were about 29 events recorded. But in 2020, more than 100 events of forest fires have already been recorded. So, intensity and the frequency of the impact of the climate change is happening, and it is visible, and we all can experience. We all have contributed in it. We all are responsible for it. We all are the culprit of it. And we need to do something about it. But imagine what will happen in the future. This is right now. There are more forest fires, more floods, more this. What will happen if the planet becomes warmer and warmer? What will happen? Well, the climate scientist warns us that we need to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade, if not 2 degrees centigrade. 1.5 degrees centigrade. I already showed you that the planet is already warmer by 1.1 degrees centigrade. How much is the gap left? 0.4 degrees centigrade. For 1.5 degrees centigrade warming, we have only margin of another 0.4 degrees centigrade. And why climate scientists tells us that? Because once we cross this 1.5 degrees centigrade or maximum 2 degrees centigrade, the various elements of the ecosystem will start to become irreversible. The climate change will become irreversible. It will not change back to its normal, even if we do lot of activities on this planet. And therefore, the wisdom lies in the fact that we should limit the global warming to ideally 1.5 degrees centigrade, if not 2 degrees centigrade. Beyond, as I said, 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade, the various elements of the nature, the climate will start to become irreversible, and we will not be able to correct back and make it to or bring it back to the normal. That's why it is important to limit the climate change or the global warming ideally to 1.5 degrees centigrade. And who is talking about all these things? These are the very authentic reports from IPCC. IPCC is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. There are 180 countries who are the member states of IPCC, and there are thousands of scientists who do not do their own research, but they analyze all the published research so that they can bring out unbiased data to you. And these are the reports that is shown here. A global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade. This report came in 2018. And climate change of 2021, a physical science basis. This report came in 2021. This report tells us a lot of things. How much climate has changed, why it has changed, what is the limit of it, why we should take drastic and immediate actions. One of the way to significantly demonstrate the climate change and how fast it is changing and how much time is left is what is called climate clock. Well, there is a relationship between the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and the global warming. So that's a linear relationship. Okay. So as per the current estimation, the earliest we can reach to 1.5 degrees centigrade of global warming is this clock, which is climate clock. According to this clock, 7 years and 305 days. This clock was recorded on 20th of September. 7 years and 305 days is what left on 20th September 2021. This is how early we can touch 1.5 degrees centigrade of global warming. And as I said, at 1.5 degrees centigrade of global warming, a sudden disaster will not happen. No. But what will happen? The climate will start to become irreversible after that. Various elements of climate will start to become irreversible after that. And that's why it's very important. All of us should put efforts to ideally limit global warming to below 1.5 degrees centigrade. And time left is very short. Well, that's all about the climate change, and climate has changed that I showed you. Now, after knowing that the climate has changed, what comes in your mind? You feel good about it, or you feel bad about it? Well, this is what it's today. My job was to make you realize that how bad the situation is. The climate change that has happened, we are responsible for it. We are culprit. And all the things that we have done in our past by using more and more energy, our future generations are going to pay for it in terms of the damage that the climate change will cause, in terms of disruptions that climate change will cause in our lives, in our future generations' lives. That's a sad story of modern human. That's a sad story of development. That's a sad story of our single focus on economic development at the cost of environmental damage, at the cost of damage to our ecosystem of rivers, at the cost of damage to our ecosystem of forest, air, all natural elements, whether it is air, whether it is water, river, forest, soil, all natural elements are degrading, or I would say degraded. There is no single natural element which are same anymore, which used to be there hundreds of years ago. We have caused severe damage to it, and therefore we are going to pay severely for it. I keep asking people, what is the most important thing in your life? The most important thing in your life. And people say, money is most important, job is most important, family is most important, children are most important. I have to tell them, close your nose for 1 minute, just for 1 minute, and you will realize the air is most important thing for you. You cannot live without breathing air for more than a minute. Water is very important for you. You cannot live without drinking water for more than 3-4 days. Soil is very important for you. You cannot survive on this planet if we do not grow the food. Rivers are very important for you. Forest is very important for you because forests are the sink for the carbon dioxide. They are the lungs of our planet. So these are the things which we cannot live without it. Air, water, soil, forest, river. But these things are not in the list of important things in our life. And we cannot live without it. We are going to suffer for it. And therefore, I hope you are awakened, you are going to wake up now at least, that let us do a development where air is also pure, water is also pure, soil is also pure, forests are intact, Mother Nature is intact, and our life is intact, our survival is intact, and climate change is affecting, and in fact it is threatening the very much survival of the common human being. Existential threat is what people talk about, existential threat. The climate change has become existential threat, and therefore we must act right now. And the IPCC tells us that our act should be drastic and immediate. It should be drastic and immediate act. We need to act right now. Well, I'm sure it cannot be a good feeling when you realize that you and I have contributed to the climate change, and the climate change is so worse. It's definitely not a good feeling.